Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to be together in church today, and not just together in church, but together in Chesterfield, Sheffield, and Derby, all together in church. Come on. So good. So good. And so I'm speaking these messages, these next 4 messages, including today, to our whole church across all of our locations, which is fantastic. And in Derby and Sheffield, you've got me on the screen. They've got me on screens here in Chesterfield as well, so they're seeing what you're seeing. Plus, they've got the live version that they can ignore. Okay, so why don't we take our seats, and then we'll get into the message today. It's so good to be together. We're starting this series called Longings. And as I said, we're going to do this for the next 4 weeks because we want to see our desires fulfilled. We are creatures of desire, human beings. We have these dreams, these hopes, these aspirations, these longings. And we want to see them fulfilled. And one of my favorite services of the year is Christmas morning. And on Christmas morning, we get the kids up and we do the show and tell. And it seems that every year I tell the story how about 15 years ago, there was this young kid called Jason. And we didn't have Christmas morning services then, so it must have been the first Sunday after Christmas. And Jason comes up, and he's got this incredible toy. He's got this Millennium Falcon. It's about this big. And he's a little kid, and he's carrying this huge thing. And I'm so excited for him. You know, as I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, wow, is there any way I can take that home? Anyway, I'm just looking at him, and I'm just so excited for him. And I say to him, so Jason, did you get what you wanted? And he said, no. I wanted a Tracy Island. And I remember his parents were they were sat just like second, third row. And I looked at his parents, and they were devastated because they had no idea. You know, this year, actually, his mum contacted me via Facebook because she'd seen the photos from Christmas morning here and seen us doing the show and tell, bring your favorite present. And she said, can you remember the year when Jason came up? And I said, how will I ever forget? And I tell that story every year. But as parents, we love it when a plan comes together. We love it when we can match the desire of our children with our provision. And I think God's like that with us too. He loves it when a plan comes together. We're creatures as humans of desire. We have longings. We want to see progress. I watched a program yesterday on Berlin and the Berlin Wall coming down and afterwards. And it showed you present day photos and aerial views of Berlin. And the thing you notice, like you do with any city in the world, is the roadworks and the cranes. Because we're humans, we're creatures of desire, and we long for progress. I read over Christmas about Elon Musk and the SpaceX and his whole desire to get humans on Mars, his plan to put humans on Mars. Part of that is his belief that we might blow ourselves up, we might destroy ourselves on planet Earth, and he wants us, you know, to have a place where we can go. But all of those things, roadworks, cranes, space exploration, is because there's something deep within our soul that wants to progress, wants to go further. We've got a desire. Sometimes it's unspoken, but we have these desires. You and I may not have the desire to live on Mars. I certainly don't. But we do have some desires that are common to everyone. And I want to talk over these next few weeks, perhaps about a few of those desires and how we can see them fulfilled. Maybe we can start here this morning in Psalm 37 and verse 4, which is a simple verse. It's a wonderful verse, but it simply says this: take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. You know, for many years when I thought about the second part of that verse, he will give you the desires of your heart, I've thought about how it's two-sided. There's 2 parts to it. There's the first part, the obvious part, I guess, and that is that when we follow after Jesus and when we follow God, there are times in our lives where the things that we long for, the things that we truly desire, we receive. We find that we've got these blessings that come from God. He gives us the desires of our heart. But you know, there's the other side of this. That when we follow God, that actually he puts those desires within us in the first place. He gives us the desires he wants us to have. We become almost hardwired for the purpose that God has for us, the purpose that we are here for. It has these two sides, these two dimensions. And so today I want to talk about the desire to be great. I've entitled this message, How to Be Great. Because I've pastored now for many years, and there's two things that I've found that are common to most everyone in this regard, and that's this. We have the desire to be great. We have the desire to be significant, but we also don't think that we're good enough. We've got the desire, but we also feel we're inadequate in some ways. I don't think always the world we live in helps us with this, because we consider greatness to be a position, to be some accolade that we receive. Maybe it's a position like prime minister. We think of some prime ministers maybe in the past and we think, that was a great person. That was a great person. Or that's a great position to have. Maybe we think of about a wealthy business owner and we think, that's great. Wouldn't it be great to be a wealthy business owner? Perhaps we think of somebody with an amazing intellect like me. I kind of resisted that joke in the first service this morning, but I couldn't resist it just then. We think of somebody with an amazing intellect, and we think that's a truly great person because of their mind and the way their mind works. We think of people with great ability, with great prowess in some arena of life, maybe sports people or musicians or artists, maybe a famous movie star, and we look at a person and we think, that's greatness. That's a great person. We can think of a mega rich person, and we can think that's greatness. Or maybe for you and I, greatness looks a little bit like this. Hope you can all see that super cute picture. This is some of the kids from church all dressed up as superheroes. Fun. And on that picture, Zion is not dressed as Iron Man, but on New Year's Eve, because he got an Iron Man costume for Christmas, he was dressed as Iron Man. He gave everybody kisses on New Year's Eve as Iron Man. Normally when you go for kisses from Zion, it's no, but he got kisses. You actually were able to kiss his mask, which I've just thought about, which means we were all kissing each other. We weren't kissing Zion, but let's not think about that too much. The picture of those kids is super cute, and I've got some individual photos of these kids from that photo shoot, and they look amazing. But you know, that superhero image of greatness can actually trip us up. We think we've got to be superwoman or superman. We think we've got to be like Iron Man. You know, we've always got to win to be great. We've always got to conquer. You know, these superheroes never really get hurt, do they? They look like they're hurt, but they never really get hurt because they're able to get up and do things. I've seen movies like you where our hero in the movie gets a broken leg, but then in the next scene, they're running like mad. You know, and you think, how does that happen? They get shot, and yet they survive. It's just incredible. But these images, our world doesn't always help us with a view on greatness. If this is what greatness is, it's very limited. And our picture of greatness can be a cruel companion to live with in life. But Jesus speaks into this. Jesus speaks into this desire that humans have to be great, to be significant in life. And he redefines greatness. He speaks to our images of greatness. And I'm so glad about that. He doesn't dismiss the desire to be great as wrong, but he does redefine it. And he makes it not accessible just the few, but he makes it accessible to all. And I'm so glad about that. Because there have been times in my life where I've convinced myself I can't be great. I can't be great because I did this. I can't be great because I thought this. I can't be great because I watched that. I can't be great because this happened to me in my life. But Jesus introduces a way of being great and a view of being great, and his way and his view is accessible for all, regardless of who we are, where we've come from, what we've done, or what has happened to us. Jesus says you can be great. We're not the first generation to be preoccupied with greatness. And if you don't think we're preoccupied with greatness, just think about the X Factor lines. Just think about those queues. I mean, you don't get a few hundred people going to rehearse for X Factor. It's tens and tens of thousands at every location. The lines are incredible. But the disciples were preoccupied with greatness. There's a couple of stories that we won't read. First one in Luke chapter 9, and they're on the road to Capernaum, and which is where Jesus lived during those ministry years. And they're on the road to Capernaum, and they begin to argue. And they begin to argue among themselves about which one of us is the greatest. I mean, have you ever been in your Connect group and, suddenly you start arguing, which one of us is the greatest? Have you ever been in a Connect group like that? A few people are nodding. I mean, but the disciples did. In Luke 22, there's a story where they're at the Last Supper. The Last Supper. Jesus has just said, one of you will betray me. They look at each other and they begin to talk and they say, is it you? Is it you? Are you going to betray me? Well, they don't talk about that for long, because then they begin to argue which of us is the greatest. At the Last Supper. How incredible is that? They don't argue about who's the greatest prophet, who's the greatest leader in our history. They begin to argue about which one of us is the greatest. But I want us to go to another passage, another instance, where this subject of greatness comes up. And the background to this passage is it's at the end of Jesus' ministry, and he's traveling from Galilee to Jerusalem. Galilee to Jerusalem is about 70 miles. It's a 10 or so day journey on foot, and Jesus is going with his disciples, but not just the 12. He's got his wider group of disciples. There could be up to 70 people. We're not sure. There were times when 72 followed him everywhere, but there's more than just the 12. There's a few people that we know are definitely there. That's Mary, his mother. There's Salome, Mary's sister, who's the mother of James and John. And there's also Joanna, who's the wife of Chuza. I like to mention Joanna because Chuza, her husband, worked for Herod, the king, who tried to kill Jesus. And it was Joanna who was one of the women who supported the ministry of Jesus. So who paid Jesus' bills? Herod did. And I kind of love that. I kind of just love that. But Matthew 28, that's what we're going to read. 20, verses 20 to 28. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons, Salome, the sister of Mary, the auntie of Jesus. I said that in a northern accent, by the way, auntie. Okay. I have no idea why I said that. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons, Salome, came to Jesus with her sons, James and John, and kneeling down asked a favor of him. What is it you want? Jesus asked. She said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left when you come into your kingdom. You see, it's the end of Jesus' ministry, and they're going to Jerusalem, and they're expecting something great to happen. They're expecting this is the time when Jesus will be made king. They've got this image in their mind that he's going to ride into Jerusalem, probably in their minds, not on a donkey, but he's going to ride on a white horse, maybe with a sword, and the people are going to say, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. That's what they're expecting. And the mother of James and John, the 12 disciples, maybe the 70 disciples, are traveling to Jerusalem because they think now is the time. Jesus is going to set up his kingdom. This is the moment when he'll go into Jerusalem. They'll make him the king and he'll defeat the Romans. That's what's happening on this 10-day journey. She said, verse 21, grant that one of these two sons of mine can sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. You don't know what you are asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup I'm going to drink? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right and left, those positions are not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom the Father has prepared. When the 10 heard about this, the other 10 of the 12, they became indignant with the two brothers. Jesus called them all together and said, You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man," he's talking about himself, "just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Jesus, in this group, begins to talk about greatness in this situation because they're expecting Jesus to be hailed as great, as a great king when they get to Jerusalem. And they want those positions of greatness for themselves. But Jesus has to recalibrate their view of greatness. So I've just got a few ideas for us this morning about what Jesus talks about when it comes to this issue of desiring to be great. And the first is this: to be great is a good ambition. I don't know if you noticed, but he didn't dismiss the ambition as a wrong thing. Whoever, verse 26, he says, whoever wants to be great among you. Do you know, I grew up, and maybe the church I was involved in and the circumstances was not an aspirational environment. You know, to be great, to want to aspire to something great was not high on the agenda. I even had times where, you know, people would almost give this perception that to want to be great was wrong. It was a wrong desire. But Jesus doesn't do that. He doesn't rebuke James and John and their mother for desiring to be great. No, he recalibrates their desire. He says, I want you to think about greatness in a different way. In effect, Jesus says, if you want to be great, then serving is the way to go. Let's read verses 26 to 28 again. He says, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. He doesn't stop them thinking or desiring to be great. He just tells them that greatness is viewed in a different way. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. Jesus says to them, greatness in the kingdom of God is a different way of thinking. It's a way of serving, especially serving others. And there's no other route to greatness that can truly satisfy us. Sometimes we can think about greatness. We can think that greatness is serving, but still we're looking for that title, that position, that seat, that prowess. And we're looking at it a way that God doesn't see it. But Jesus says, no, this is how God sees it. He sees that greatness is the person who's willing to serve others. The person who's willing to become like a slave. You know, we can serve and still want the accolade. We can serve and still want the praise and still want the position. But actually, Jesus said the greatness, true greatness, is that willingness to serve. James, John, and Salome, their mother, were still thinking about greatness in the old way. They were thinking that greatness was a position of power. Greatness was some kind of prowess you had. Some position. Let them sit at your right and your left. And every king in that day, whether it was a Greek king or a Roman Caesar or a Babylonian king, the key positions of power were the position at the right and the left. And Salome had decided, you know, I'm going to get my boys in those seats. They were thinking about it the wrong way. It was a title. It was ruling over people. It was how people viewed you because of your status. But Jesus says to them, even my greatness isn't going to come this way. My greatness is not going to come by my power. It's not going to come by my prowess. It's not going to come in my title. It's not going to come as I rule and demand the obedience of people. No, my greatness isn't in those things. My greatness is going to be when you see me lay down my life for other people. That's when I'm going to become great. Just like me, greatness is serving, and specifically serving other people. The next idea is this, that great people ask, what can I do? Great people ask, what can I do? Salome, James, and John, as we've said, saw greatness the wrong way. They saw it in position, in power, in prestige. They even thought they could pull some strings. I mean, they were the cousins of Jesus. And Salome was Mary's sister. I'm auntie. Jesus' auntie. Surely that would count for something. Surely I can pull some strings. We don't want Peter sitting at Jesus' right. He's not related. We don't want Peter and Andrew in right and left seats. No, let's get my boys in those seats, Salome thought. Just like any good mother would try and pull strings. That's how people think about greatness. That actually getting positions of power is not what you know, it's... I'll try that again. Getting into a position of power is not what you know, it's who you know. We still think that like today, don't we? And Salome thinks, well, I know Jesus. I know Mother Mary. Maybe I can pull some strings and get there before Peter does and Andrew does. And I can get James and John in those seats of power so that when Jesus comes into his kingdom, who's at his right, who's at his left? My boys. She thinks she could do that. Surely that will count forever for something. So they ask the question, where can we sit? Which one of us can sit at your right? Which one of us can sit at your left? In fact, they actually make a demand. They ask for a favor. We want to sit. One of us at your right, one of us at your left. I think when it comes to greatness, we can ask some wrong questions. Just like they that day asked the question, where can we sit? Which was the wrong question. They should have asked, what can we do? It was the wrong question. We can also ask the wrong questions. I think we often ask, what should I do? And I think that's the wrong question. Because what should I do speaks of duty. It doesn't always speak of willingness. Now, I think there's things because of who we are and our positions that we should do. But sometimes we can end up living our lives on somebody else's expectation because someone else thinks that this is what we should do. What should I do? And we can live our lives without joy and without peace and without freedom because we end up just living, doing what somebody else thinks we should do. What should I do is the wrong question. Here's another wrong question. What would Jesus do? I know, gasp, shock. What would Jesus do? Because it sounds right, doesn't it? And the sentiment is good, but here's the problem. I'm not Jesus. Perhaps I'll say that a few more times until you realize it. I'm not Jesus. So ask him, what would Jesus do? The sentiment is great because I want to be in his image. I want to be like him. I want to follow him. The sentiment is great, but ultimately, I'm not Jesus. I don't know if you've realized it yet. There's things that Jesus can do that you can't do. I'll try that one again as well. Maybe you've got it in Derby and Sheffield. You know, there's things that Jesus can do that I can't do and that we can't do. It's a great sentiment, but we're not Jesus. It's the wrong question. Here's another wrong question. What is everybody else doing? And I'll tell you why that's the wrong question, because crowds aren't always right. Crowds aren't always wise. Crowds don't always choose the right thing or the right way. And you and I were not meant just to follow the crowd. We were meant to follow people, yes, who through faith and patience, as Hebrews puts it, follow God and inherit the promise. We were meant to follow other people who follow after God. But we're not just meant to follow the crowds because they're not always right. And because we are not meant to be we're meant to be originals and not copies. You were made an original. We can't spend our life just being a copy of the crowd. So great people ask, what can I do? What can I do? What is it that I can contribute? Here's a quote, and it'll come on the screen, and it says this: great people see what everyone else sees, but choose to do what no one else is doing. They see what everyone sees, but they choose to do what no one else is doing. They're going to get a visual aid of this. They're on the way to Jerusalem. Just in a few days, they're going to walk into Jerusalem. And they're going to have the Passover meal, the Last Supper as we know it. And they're going to walk into that room, not just the 12. I know Michelangelo just pictured the 12, around a table. They probably didn't have a table as well. But anyway, let's not criticize Michelangelo, that great painter and artist. But they're going to walk into a room where they're going to have the Last Supper. Not just the 12. Maybe the 72. We don't know. But they're going to have that supper. And every one of them is going to see the same thing. See the same thing. Here's what they're going to see. A bowl and a towel. Let's imagine there's 72. All 72 of them see, as they walk into that room, a bowl and a towel. But great people see what everyone else sees and do what no one else does. Jesus is the only one who sees the bowl and sees the towel and says, come on now, everyone, let me wash your feet. Peter sees how ridiculous this is. Peter sees the fact that, we got it wrong. We all saw that. We all saw the bowl. We all saw the towel. And we all walked past it. So Peter, when it comes to Peter, he says, Lord, not me. Don't wash my feet. But Jesus says, Peter, unless I wash your feet, your hands, your head, you have no part in me. Unless you let me serve you, you can't be a part of my kingdom. Jesus washed the feet. Those X Factor lines are pretty big, aren't they? Well, here's the good news. The lines queuing up for serving are pretty small, which means it doesn't take you very long to get to the front of that queue. And don't be disturbed that the line to serve is small. Don't be disturbed that the line to serve. Sometimes you decide to serve. Maybe you decide to serve God or serve others. And you become passionate about something that you really feel will help people. And you look around and you think, where's the line? Where's the queue? Don't ever get disturbed by that. Because great people ask, what can I do? What can I do? And they know that God sees. God sees which queue we find ourselves in. God sees where we're looking to line up, whether we're looking to line up to serve or not. And the last thought is that great people do for one what they wish they could do for everyone. Great people do for one what they wish they could do for everyone. I love this because this makes accessible greatness to all of us. It means that there isn't one person in our services today. There isn't one person, whether we're in Sheffield, Derby, Chesterfield, or you're watching online. So many people watch online live, and there'll be lots of people watching now. It means that not one of us actually is exempt from greatness. Because we can do for one what we wish we could do for everyone. I love that. Sometimes, if like me, you may have heard statements like this. You may have even said it like I have. If I do this for you, I have to do it for everyone. You know, when you have 3 kids and your kids come and they ask you for something, you say, you know, one of your get-outs is, well, if I did it for you, I'd have to do it for everyone. Am I the only parent that said that? You know, or if I give you this, I'd have to give everybody this. And we're trying to be fair. But you know, in life, it's more important to be good than fair. Yeah. It's more important to do something for one than do nothing for anyone. Because we're just thinking, I can't do it for everyone. Great people do for one what they wish they could do for everyone. It's better to be good than to be fair. It's better to do something than be paralyzed by fairness and do nothing. As a church for 30 years now, all of our existence, we've given at least 10% of our income away to ministries that we feel help people, to ministries that are building the church, to ministries that serve and care for others. Over 10% of the income that comes into our church we give away every year. And I want to show you this picture because we've taken this principle online. This is a picture of Lee Spencer Hawkins. Some of you may remember Lee, but many years ago, Lee was brought by his family to this church. Lee was on drugs. He was in a relationship, and he lived in a place where everyone he knew were really taking drugs all the time. And so he would come to church, he would love it, and he'd go back to that environment. He'd get jobs, he'd perhaps lose jobs because of his lifestyle. I would try and meet him in the week to get him out of his environment and take him to my home and talk to him, or take him places perhaps that I was going. Occasionally I would meet him and take him. But I just saw that there was this cycle. Every time he would go back into those where he lived, and just that environment just pulled him down again and again. And he wanted to follow Jesus, and he wanted to know Jesus. And I could see his pain. And so we suggested, Lee, why don't you go to Bethel? Why don't you go to Bethel? And we took him to Bethel, and Lee went to Bethel, but he found it too overwhelming at Bethel, and he left. Sadly, he left. And a short while after, Lee died. Lee died because of his lifestyle. We rang Bethel up and we said to Bethel, can you tell us how much it costs you to keep one bed open for a whole year? Can you just tell us that number? Because we want to make sure that there's one person who doesn't finish like Lee. We want to make sure that there's one person who has a place to go, a place to recover, a place to be restored. We want to do for one what we wish we could do for everyone. And as a church, we have now done that for many, many years, and since that time. We also contacted at the same time, or a similar time, City Hearts. And we said the same thing to City Hearts, but all those years back. We said, how much does it cost you to keep one bed working for the whole year so that somebody who's been trafficked can come and be safe? And then they could give us a figure. Their finances work a little bit different now. But we began giving on that basis that we were keeping a bed, a room available for somebody. We were trying to do for one what we wish we could do for everyone. We still give today to City Hearts. And I love that. That's why I personally love compassion. I love compassion because I can take a compassion child, and I'd love to rescue every child from poverty. I'd love to rescue every child from abuse, but I can do for one what I can't do for everyone. I can forgo a McDonald's every week, and I can release one child from poverty. You might think, oh, I'm not making a big difference, it's one child. But I tell you, great people do for one what they wish they could do for everyone. Are you clapping in Sheffield and Derby? I hope so, because that was good. Here's a final picture. I want to show you this picture. It's all right, I'm just pretending to cry. No, not really. When we were in Rwanda, 80,000 kids are sponsored in Rwanda. 80,000 people doing for one what they wish they could do for everyone just in that country. Isn't that incredible? We went to a project where they're helping mums with young babies. 20 years ago in Rwanda, there was the genocide. 1 million people were killed in 100 days. This girl lost all her family, everything. She was 3, 4, 5, maybe years of age, lost everything. Didn't know anyone. We met someone in Rwanda whose next door neighbors, who had been the best friends of the family, actually ended up killing the whole family through genocide because they were of different tribes and so on. But this girl, she had lost all her family. She ended up moving, and now she was in the capital city. And she got a job. She, like you see, she's in her early 20s, and she'd got a job, and she was working, trying to pay and trying to earn money for food. And one night, a guy took advantage of her and raped her. And she was raped, and she ended up with this child. And we went to her home. And if you imagine the white bit of the stage where Ruth is, this was the size of her home. That's where she lived. She had a little mattress about that thick in the corner. She had a few pots over there. She had 3 items of clothing on the wall, and that was it. That's all she had. The guy who owned the room let her use the toilet, in another property that he had. And we began to talk to her, and we began to say, has compassion helped her? And she said, they've helped me with becoming a mum, and they've helped me know what to do with my child, because I knew nothing. I've got no parents. I've got nobody to support me in this. They've just been there for me, helped us, cared for us, had some health care and things like that. And so we said to her, what do you eat? Because it was obvious. We just saw these bowls, these things what do you eat? She said, well, when I eat. And that triggered something in our minds. When I eat, I will eat a bowl of rice. Oh, so how often do you eat? Oh, I would have 1 bowl of rice a day. And we said, would that be every day? She said, no, only when I've got rice, money to get rice. I'd only eat on those days. So maybe 2 or 3 times a week, I'd eat a bowl of rice. So Jeannie and I and another pastor, we had a little bit of a chat. Went down to the local shop, if you can call it a shop. We went down to the local shop. We bought a big sack, really big sack of rice. We bought a big bottle of oil. We gave her the oil. It was like we'd given her the world. She told us how much rice, they told us how much rice it took to make a bowl. We calculated that we gave her enough rice and enough oil to make 355 meals. So we gave her food for a whole year. We did for one what we wished we could do for everyone. Great people do that. And I want you to imagine 3 things as we respond to this message this morning. Firstly, I want us to imagine our view of greatness changing so much that we no longer compare ourselves to Superwoman or Superman or Iron Man or whoever it is. I want us to imagine that greatness is in our grasp. It's not found in the big queue, the long queue that's looking for fame, but greatness is found in that short queue. There's no rush for this queue. You won't get trampled in this queue. You won't have to spend loads of money to get in this queue. You can get to the front of this queue super easy. Greatness is found in this queue. It's not found in that long queue. Maybe you've never realized the power of serving and serving others. Maybe you've become tired or disappointed. Maybe sometimes you've given yourself to serving and you've looked around and you've thought, where is everybody? They're in that queue or a different queue. But I want our view of greatness to change and realizing, like so many of us do, that when we do for one what we wish we could do for everyone, that's great. That's Jesus' view of greatness. Also, I want us to imagine asking, what can I do? Not what can somebody else do? Not, I wish I was like somebody else. I don't know about you, but I'd like to be Dave. Or I'd like to be like Dave. He looks so good at worship. The best pictures we take in worship are pictures of Dave. They even get comments of I've got a man crush on you. And things like, not from me. They get comments like that, and Dave, he's so good at what he does. But so often when we compare ourselves with what others do, we actually exclude ourselves. And God never asks us to do what others can do. He only ever asks us to do what we can do. Only ever asks us to do what we can do. And the third thing is, what if we did for one? Maybe even today. What if we did for one what we wish we could do for everyone? And then we did it again tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the day after that. Tom Owens at the back, I don't know what Tom Owens is doing this morning. I don't know what he's doing up the back. He'll be doing something. But I want to thank you, Tom, for doing whatever you want to do. I'm going to do for you what I wished I could do for everyone. And I want to encourage you, because you serve this church so well and you make a difference to us. And if you didn't do whatever you're doing today, this church would be a different place. We got a whole host of people serving in Sheffield and Derby, people who were up early this morning, setting up venues, doing things. Thank you so much for what you do. And I get the privilege of standing on a stage, talking to hundreds of people and encouraging people. But even if I didn't, I could see Tom and talk to Tom, and I could say, thank you so much, Tom. I could be an encourager. I could do for one what I wished I could do for everyone. Greatness is a good ambition. We become great when we serve, especially when we serve others. The greatest among you, Jesus said, is the one who serves. Come on, let's stand. Let's sing. Let's worship. I'll hand back to the people in Sheffield. I'll hand back to the people in Derby. Have a great close of the service. Let's do for one what we wish we could do for everyone. Thank you so much.